Woody Allen's Decades in Film.
A podcast about the incredible filmography of one of the most prolific and most controversial filmmakers of our time. From Redneck Cella Studios, A&B in Hong Kong, we are your hosts, William Elvin and Q.
What's up, everyone? This is What Would You Do, and we are talking about 1973's Sleeper, featuring Woody Allen and, of course, the lovely Diane Keaton. And Q, can you give us our brief synopsis before we go deep into this wonderfully funny film?
Sleeper. Basically, Woody Allen stars as Miles Monroe, a man who wakes up after 200 years of being cryogenically frozen. He is now thrown into a highly technologically advanced world with an oppressive government. So that's basically that movie in a nutshell.
I think this is the most wholesome Woody Allen movie so far. I mean, it's something that
too.
Everyone could watch and enjoy. This is something. This is much more mainstreamable, even in today's standards. What do you think?
Yeah.
Initial opinions and observations before we really get to a deep dive in this thing.
So for those of you guys who have just tuned in to our episode, so basically the concept of this podcast is we will go through the movies of Woody Allen in chronological order. And so William has seen most of these films. Yes. I have not.
This is the first
As a matter of fact,
you was seeing this.
As a matter of fact, I jump in blind with every single movie episode that we do. The only thing that I learn is the title. I actually even forgot the title at the start of this. I was like, what are we watching again? And so,
you remember that it was going to be the first Diane Keaton film, right? Yeah,
exactly. Right. That's really what stuck in my mind. And I was telling William earlier, I was telling William off air that I have never seen Diane Keaton as young as she was in this movie. So my exposure to Diane's work has always been her later movies, which are mostly depictions of her as a mom and that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. But that did not stop me from having that crush on her. Despite that, seeing her in this light, oh my God, it's just it was a treat.
I think Diane Keaton was a relatively new name even at this point, but she already was introduced by Francis Ford Coppola in The Godfather, the first Godfather, which came out before a year before Sleeper. So The Godfather Part 1.
Just 1 year before. Oh, wow, okay.
Just 1 year before, 1972. And before that, just a little bit of a background on Diane and Woody. They starred in both the Broadway staging and the film version of Woody Allen's play Play It Again, Sam, which was directed on film by Herbert Ross. They met there. Woody and Diane met there during the Broadway staging, and they eventually developed a romantic relationship. But by this time, when they shot this film, they were already not together. They already broke up. I don't know how long before the filming of this film, but you can see the chemistry in here. All right?
Oh yeah. For sure.
Let us zero in on your opinions first. As a first-time viewer, what do you think of this film?
Okay, so the movie opened up with a very retro futuristic aesthetic, and I was like, is this sci-fi? I was like, what the hell? Given my limited exposure to Woody Allen's films and looking at the previous movies that we've seen, I was so surprised to see this aesthetic for him. I mean, obviously, it was such a minefield of visual gags, and particularly because that was at least 4 decades ago. Yeah. And I guess at the time, that was kind of like an accurate depiction of what they thought of the future. And now 40 years later, it's even funnier because we're like, wow, okay, this is what you thought the future would be. Like all of those retro futuristic cars, like
Yeah.
all of the sleekness that they thought
Yeah.
was pretty cool at the time. I was actually quite floored with how it was almost picturesque how they depicted it. But yeah, I mean, I really like the production design. They really went all out. They went ham on the production design. I'm a designer by profession, and I really appreciate really good set design, and I loved it here. It was beautiful. I mean,
I don't know if you remember or if you took notice at the opening credits. There's one name in there in the production design team, a name that we all know by now. Joel Schumacher is the costume
oh really?
designer of this film. Yeah.
What?
Before he designed the bat nipples, he was designing Woody Allen's sleeper. So this is
Oh,
this is I
nice.
think this is his first real break in the Hollywood movie industry, and of
That's
course he was going
amazing.
to go way beyond this and make a
Yeah, yeah, I
great
would think so.
name for himself based on what
That's
I read.
crazy.
I think Woody and Joel Schumacher remained really good friends.
That's amazing. But because the production design for this movie is just oh, it's stellar. It's so bizarre, how if we're if we're watching like a film in like an old film depicting a future that we know for a fact that it's not going to be like that.
Well, we still have a bit. We still have
Yeah,
a
yeah, yeah. I mean,
hundred or so
yeah,
years, but I
we
don't
just
think it's gonna be.
we just reached like 1/5 of the estimate. I mean, it's not necessarily 200 years in the future, but
You
and
mean to say you don't think the orgasmatron is gonna happen in the future?
I look forward to it though. I mean, if that's one reality that's gonna happen, I welcome that.
I'd welcome the orb too. I love the idea of the
Oh,
orb.
oh
It's
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah. That
those.
orb.
Yeah, those ideas are just like brilliant. And keep in mind, this is a few years before A New Hope. This is a few years
Oh right,
before
yeah,
Star
yeah,
Wars, the
yeah,
first one. It's a nice imagination of this kind of world on film, and judging by that context, you think it was a successful one for Mr. Allen for this one, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, his vision of the future is actually quite accurate, to be honest. Like, aside from the aesthetics, no, the only thing that actually kind of floundered in terms of the concept, in terms of how he envisioned the future, is the aesthetic, because that's not how our future is currently is.
Yeah,
But all of the
right.
concepts, for most of the concepts that didn't involve it being a gag, it was actually fairly
Yeah.
accurate. Oh, everything is cataloged. We all have our IDs. We all have people know what we like, what we don't like. That's true. That's
Right,
true
right, right.
right now.
Yeah. He tied it to the oppressively governed environment.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
this kind of like hits that note. Like, is there a correlation between a highly technological society to a more Big Brother type of government rule? And I know
Hmm.
that may be kind of overthinking it because we're talking about one of
Yeah.
Woody's early funny comedies. Before we get to the next films, we're already seeing that widening of thematic horizons from Woody Allen. I think everything you always wanted to know about sex already had that, like, you kind of see where he wanted to go
Mm.
philosophically, right? But now
Yeah. Yeah.
you already have Diane Keaton and Woody thinking about like the existence of God and things like that. We already have those
Yeah. Yeah.
conversations,
Yeah.
and it
Yeah. Yeah.
opens up like knowing what I know for the next few films and the next few years. This is a revelation, and it. Of course, I'm getting ahead because you don't know what I'm talking about. But to the
Yeah.
Woody
I
Allen
was like,
fans out there, we probably
yeah.
feel the same thing.
Before we continue today's discussion, we'd like to invite everyone to follow us on our channels and social media accounts. What Would He Do podcast is available on Spotify, Anchor.fm, and other major streaming platforms.
Yes, you can also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. All you have to do is visit our homepage at www.williamelvin.com/whatwouldhe-do for all our links.
Or you can email us, and we'd love to have a quick chat with you at whatwouldhe-do@gmail.com. So he's ragging on like healthy options, like healthy food, and he's always like doing jabs towards like I think there's this line that, oh, this tastes awful. I would have made a fortune if I sold this in my health food store. That he would do that, and it's just funny because that's actually really true, especially in the current like in 2021. That's true. You would think that he kind of has this inside joke that he kind of knows what the future will bring, you know. What I noticed from this film is this has a lot more kind of like stretched out visual gags.
Yeah, right.
Like
right.
the scenes
Right.
have, so it's not as the jokes are not as rapid as his previous films, but they
Yes.
kind of like
Yeah.
he wanted to kind of like steep all of the humor in and just extend the visual gags.
Right. It doesn't feel like a string of gags that were turned into a movie. It felt like it's a movie
No.
first, and then the gags were suited to that kind of story that he was trying to tell.
I love the rocket launcher gag.
Which one? The two people who yeah.
Who never succeeded in shooting their rocket launcher. That was
But before
like,
I forget,
what the hell?
because since we're talking about like the production things, this is also the music in this movie is also performed by Woody Allen himself on clarinet,
Really?
with the Preservation Hall Jazz Band. So this is what you hear. You hear the music here,
That's
and it's
amazing.
played by Woody himself. And of course, this is also the first time we meet Diane Keaton in a Woody Allen written and directed film. Diane Keaton is appearing here after being introduced to a bigger audience in The Godfather, and this is her introduction to audiences as a comedy star. This also includes an impersonation of Marlon Brando.
I really liked her performance here because, I mean, following her, I mean, I'm not a huge fan that I've seen all of her movies, but
Yeah.
with the characters that she normally portrays, she is always portrayed as this smart, sassy woman. Whereas here she was depicted as kind of like a dumb blonde. So sorry for the stereotype.
Yeah, right.
I still need to kind of like see how she evolves in future movies that they will star in. But
Yeah.
I kind of like how she. You were right in mentioning that their chemistry was really kind of like the essential thing that was going on in this film, because if they were not as compatible on screen, I would think it wouldn't have worked like properly, because the gags just depended on them just bantering and just
Yeah.
and just kind
yeah,
of like
yeah.
making the scene quite interesting, you know. To be perfectly candid, I was mostly distracted by her beauty on screen.
I wouldn't blame you. No one would blame you for that. Yeah.
I mean, this is Diane Keaton at her prime. Like this
Yeah.
is the freshest, one of the freshest like times that she's on screen. She provided an equal energy opposing Woody Allen's character. And for me,
Right.
that is paramount, because Woody Allen as a performer, just how awkward he is,
Yeah.
and how, because if you put him on in a scene, he automatically stands out just because
Yeah.
he looks like that.
You're right.
But Diane Keaton as kind of like his foil kind of balances it out, because you don't know it's kind of polar opposites in a way, and that works for me. And their banter and their chemistry kind of like just gels together.
you mentioned about the equal treatment of Woody and Diane here, and you are
Mhm.
right. This is still the stereotypical ditzy
Yeah, yeah.
woman character. The twist here is that both of them are kind of like idiots in this world. Right? Both of them are like, both of them are
Actually, yeah, yeah, yeah,
fools.
yeah.
Yeah, they're just thrown into a world that they don't actually have any, any grasp on. That Diane is coming from the high society elite pretentious artistic world,
That's true.
and
That's true. That's
Woody
true.
is someone from 200 years ago who doesn't know where he is. And so it's very like it's very equal, and this is the first time we see that. um Actually, if you go back to the Janet Margolin and Louis Lasser roles in the previous movies, I think this is the first time the female character is actually an active force in the driving of the story.
Mm,
Before the women are just like, they are the love interest of this
yeah, yeah,
bumbling
I agree.
fool. Now you have Diane Keaton who's joining the underground. She's fighting for it. She's there
Yeah,
when the
yeah.
revolution happens. She plots with Woody Allen. She steals the nose. All of those things are
Oh, that
are the
knows.
first time we see it here, like a first push on that direction.
As I've said, I look forward to the other four times that they star on screen together. And you're right. They're just playing off each other's energy in this film. Like Diane Keaton, her character, what's her character's name again? She
Luna.
was Luna. Luna. So
Yeah.
so Luna's character was like just pushing it forward, and we're not as feminine. They weren't as actively feminist at the time,
Yeah. Right.
but having her kind of like play that role is kind of like great to see on screen.
If you're enjoying our discussion, another perfect companion for your Woody Allen film marathons is the Woody Allen Pages podcast at www.woodyallenpages.com.
It's a great resource for film by film details that would surely add to your Woody Allen viewing experience. So check them out. I wrote a lot of like gags from a designer point of view.
Let's
It
go through
was
that one by I want to hear everything from you, because this is perfect for you, because this is the first really stylized Woody Allen film. I mean, outside of the medieval segment
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah, yeah.
the other ones and everything you always wanted to know. This continues the look of that last segment in everything you always wanted to know about sex but were afraid to
Yes,
ask.
yes, yes.
This
Correct, correct.
continues that direction. I want you to go through everything you've observed, like in terms of like design gags and everything, because I know there's a lot in here.
It almost reminded me of the Jetsons, like how they kind of like depicted this. It's really like that. At like retro futuristic, I think is the right term for that. So
Yeah.
and one characteristic of that kind of like aesthetic is they thought that things would be a lot bigger than they actually are. So particularly
Yeah.
for
Right.
that scene where he was trying to look for food and he saw that garden, so to speak,
Yeah.
and everything was just jumbo.
You even have a jumbo banana peel slipping gag
Yeah,
in there. It's
exactly,
it's
exactly.
just
I was
so.
like, they needed to do this gag. They needed to do it. That it was almost kind of Chaplin-ish in terms of like how they
Yes.
treated the
Right.
comedy.
Right.
They were playing around with like themes like video conferencing and FaceTime. You know how
Yeah.
they called the police
Yeah.
like it was a TV and they were talking to the TV, and then
Yeah.
for that scene where he was toothbrushing.
Yeah, and,
It
and
was a
shaving is this the
yeah,
is
oh
this the
yeah,
scene
yeah,
where it's like the,
shaving.
the mirror
And
is
then it was
like a
changing the channel.
television where you could like change the channel?
The gyro, yeah. It's cool to see
Yeah,
that.
right.
And oh, this is my favorite. The Jewish robot tailors. Remember that scene where he was trying to get on his suit and just the two robots came out, and they were literally
Oh
machines,
yeah,
not
yeah, yeah,
even the
yeah.
stylized,
Oh, the
not even
bickering
yeah,
tailors.
that stereotype of like Jews, like Jewish people being tailors, and like they have a suit shop. And even like 200 years in the future, in their robot forms, they're still bickering. It's just so iconically Jewish, I would think. And then there's just so many like
And yeah.
lines that I found that are gold. So when he was talking about, so when they were having an exchange, they were seated on the stairs in that first apartment that they were in. he was he
Oh,
was
right, right,
he was
right, right.
describing
Yeah.
that he was this is I don't understand. This is such a offensive term right now, mulatto. So he
Yeah,
was
yeah, yeah,
trying
right.
to, he was describing his that his father was black and his mother was white. Then and vice versa. I was like, what? And vice versa. You can only credit this to Woody Allen's genius in like writing wit. So they when they were inspecting the Volkswagen, he was like, "Oh, what is this? It says NRA," and he was like, "Oh, he was probably a member of the National Rifle Association. There was a group that helped criminals get guns so they could shoot citizens."
And it's a public
That
service.
that oh my god, I was laughing my ass off. That's so good.
When they were already pushing it, right? They were pushing it off the cliff, and they were
Yeah,
having
yeah.
that discussion about like the existence of God and stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
then Diane Keaton was like, "I believe that there's someone watches over us." And then Woody just says, "Yeah, unfortunately, it's the government." That joke is just
Yeah.
on fire, you know. It's just like
Yeah, exactly.
it's very relevant. It's still relevant until today. I would say this movie is much more relevant today because you know it's very
Exactly.
the authoritarian nature of this
Yeah, 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 yeah.
government. These are the things that we always talk about now, and it's all in relation to how technology is evolving.
And just the amount of parallel things that they were trying to kind of combat and kind of like bring to light. Where yeah, I mean you're right. Like they were talking about the government and how like they are always watching. It's almost like this whole movie is kind of like an episode of Black Mirror but comedy. And then they dealt with kind of themes with cloning. I mean, obviously it's a
Yeah,
gag, but
yeah.
it's a it's a it's a
Yeah.
it's a discussion about, and I think particularly at this era they were actually really exploring the the themes of like immortality and cloning
Right.
and cryogenics. And that's why it was such a rich topic to be discussed. And even until today, I think
Yeah.
people who are going to watch this in 2021, they would be seeing really things that what how could he have thought of these themes?
Even the subplot about like the great leader actually dying, and then they didn't
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
acknowledge that he
Oh yeah,
died,
yeah,
and all
exactly,
they kept was
exactly,
the
exactly.
nose. That's very, I would say that's a joke that is very today. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
that's
something that
very very relevant.
we could relate to today because that's something that may or may not already have happened, and you know that these are things that could happen in the future, and it's just so relevant, and it's surprisingly relevant for something written and produced in 1973.
Before we continue today's discussion, we'd like to invite everyone to follow us on our channels and social media accounts. What Would He Do podcast is available on Spotify, Anchor.fm, and other major streaming platforms.
Yes, you can also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. All you have to do is visit our homepage at www.williamelvin.com/whatwouldydoo for all our links.
Or you can email us, and we'd love to have a quick chat with you at whatwouldydoo@gmail.com. I think for a lot of the movies that we've seen, well, the 4 movies that I've seen so far, I really need to kind of like unpack and watch them again for me to actually kind of like dig really deeper into the whole the underlying meanings of what he wanted to kind of like portray, because
Yeah.
comedy is such a is such a great medium for making you think about something that you initially didn't want to think about,
Yeah.
because it's always coded in humor, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. And you don't I'm laughing at things that I didn't initially find funny, and then I'm
Mhm.
like, oh, that's why it makes sense. And I like that in his movies, that it actually makes me kind of like go deeper into the gags. And it's not just stupid. I mean, there's always stupid jokes that he
Yeah. Right.
he
Yeah.
brings to the table, but there's a lot of it is actually laced in a deeper theme, a deeper kind of like meaning. And
Yeah. It's
I like
almost
that. I was Yeah.
it's almost like you already know that this guy wants to say something a little bit bigger, but at this point still can't. So he's trying to
Precisely.
cover things up with
Precisely. Yeah, yeah,
what
yeah.
he's known for, so that it becomes like a
Yeah.
more swallowable pill, right?
And yeah, I
And
mean,
even in the visually creative shots in this film, you already have some of that brilliance in here. I mean, we always
mhm.
saw where he was trying to go in the earlier films, but there's this one shot here that I remember when I first saw this. I was really mind blown by how creative that was. Do you remember that exchange between Woody and Diane behind the cinema screen where they showed
Yeah, 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 yeah.
the primer, the briefing of the nose
Yeah,
thing?
yeah,
That's a
yeah, yeah,
very
yeah.
beautiful thing to look at, and it's going to
Yes,
develop from here.
I love that idea, how they kind of like played with the silhouettes, and how they introed
Yeah,
that so that it wasn't kind of like jarring to the audience, because they could have easily just transitioned into kind of like
right.
that sort of treatment. But the way that they kind of led to that scene was, it was a projection, they made it
Right.
part he made it part of the scene, that oh,
Yeah.
they're in a projection room, and we can't just go into this kind of like treatment. And it worked out in their favor for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
that was such a beautiful that was such a beautiful exchange in terms like how it looks visually. Like when Diane Keaton would go to the one screen, and then he would go to the other screen, and then they would meet on that's a beautiful transition. I really, really appreciate how aesthetically pleasing this movie was.
As a whole, though, as a whole, this movie was an easy watch, like through and through. This is, I think, this is the easiest watch so far.
Hmm.
I think this is the most easily digestible so
I
far.
agree.
Even with because we're all used to sci-fi now. It's not much of
Yeah,
it's not much of a visual impression to us,
not
like these things.
yeah.
But
I mean,
knowing when it was done, this is still impressive. Knowing when it
oh
was
yeah, for
done.
sure, for sure.
Yeah.
I agree. I agree. And I would even dare to say that because this was so mainstream, I enjoyed it less.
Oh, really?
That Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I obviously I enjoyed it because, well,
Yeah.
hello, it's Diane Keaton
Yeah.
on screen and it's sci-fi. But I can't put my finger on it. I That it kind of felt safe
Mhm.
for me. It wasn't as pushing boundaries as the previous films that we watched, or at least I
Right.
watched.
Right. Right.
So it kind of felt, yeah, it kind of felt that they Woody Allen was kind of like holding off doing
Yeah.
more revolutionary things,
Right.
because maybe it was a new thing that he was trying to do, like sci-fi wasn't really his forte. But it kind of felt that like that to me, like it felt too safe.
It would feel too safe because you just came off a movie where someone
Yeah,
was
yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly.
intimate with a
I get
sheep.
I
So it's like,
Yeah.
this is Looney Tunes compared to that. This is
Very good point. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, I guess. Yeah, yeah, you're right. But yeah, I mean, but even like compared to Bananas, I would think.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
I because Bananas, I understand. Well, obviously, Bananas is such a it's a revolution movie, so obviously
Yeah,
the
yeah, right,
themes would
right.
be a lot more kind of like serious. But
Yeah,
this, I liked it, but
yeah.
yeah, I think that's kind of like my takeaway is that it almost felt what's the term? It almost felt clinical the way that it was treated.
Especially when you underline the fact that it was so mainstream. I mean, no one can dispute that, though.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
this is as mainstream Woody Allen can get. If you're enjoying our discussion, another perfect companion for your Woody Allen film marathons is the Woody Allen Pages podcast at www.woodyallenpages.com.
It's a great resource for film by film details that would surely add to your Woody Allen viewing experience. So check them out.
The ending interaction between Woody and Diane in this film is kind of like setting up the way this relationship is gonna go, at least on screen for the next four
Really?
or five films. Um, you know, they were talking about love and sex
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah. Yeah.
death. They were, and Woody just ended this film with what is all this? And he says, sex and death. It's two of the things that I'm very fond of. I'm
They come
paraphrasing,
once
of
in a
course. I can't
lifetime.
remember.
Yeah,
Yeah. It comes once. Sex and
yeah,
death are two things that come once in a lifetime, but at least after death, I'm not nauseous or something.
yeah, yeah.
This is a great
That's a
line to
brilliant
end
line.
the first Woody Diane Allen film together. Can you guess what the title of the next film would be after this
Yeah,
one?
no idea.
To our listeners, he doesn't really have an idea, and he's willingly doing that because he doesn't want to get spoiled. Like Q enjoys the whole mystery of this one and the whole thing that it feels like it's getting
Yeah, yeah.
unpacked right in front of his eyes
Hmm.
every week.
It's actually kind of funny that you brought that up. Every time we go into a movie, I was like, there. I'm always under the impression that, damn it, I should have watched this beforehand, so I have better intelligent things to say and to talk about. You know what?
No, it's fine. You know why? You know why? Because my plan is, after a decade, right? So we're getting through
Yeah,
a decade of Woody Allen's films. We go back and talk about the films again. So
that's
this
cool.
is
That's
a
cool.
perfect time to just like go back really, maybe read again about it. If you want to see them again, you can see them again and reassess your opinions and where your ideas of Woody Allen as a filmmaker is now, and then you go back, it's gonna change, right? And I'm sure it will change after 1979, and we're nearing that. And
Yeah.
the point is that we're talking about sex and death as this movie ends, and the next movie is called Love and Death with Diane
Ooh.
Keaton and Woody Allen. So Love and
Oh,
Death
okay.
is next, and we are heading to the end of what Woody Allen himself calls his early funny films era. So the next film is gonna be the end of that, and it's quite
No,
nice that we're getting there, and you're kind of feeling where this is all going. Give me your verdict of Sleeper, so that we can move on to Love and Death, and to the really meaty stuff after that.
with Sleeper, I really, really love the aesthetics. That blew me. I mean, that blew my mind. That really expanded the whole aesthetic that I would. Because I mean, his earlier films were can be categorized as kind of like homemade videos, to be honest.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I mean, except for the last one. The last one had legit production value, but
Oh,
compared to
the
like
everything you
the
always
first,
wanted to know. Yeah, right.
yeah. But like compared to like the first movie, this
Yeah,
is leagues away in terms of like budget. the lines, the dialogue, and the direction is kind of really, really good. The act, obviously, Diane Keaton, but as I've mentioned earlier, it felt kind of safe. So I guess my score for this movie would be around a 7.
Around a 7. Still higher than
Yeah,
Bananas.
still higher than
Because
Bananas
this
for
is
me.
much more coherent than Bananas, obviously.
For most of the movie and Bananas, I was like, "What's happening?" Wait! I want to go back to that. Let's go back to that. But this one kind of like felt a lot more coherent for sure.
But a lot more safer, and therefore it kind of like brought you down a little bit, because like he was pushing
Yeah,
a lot of
yeah.
things and everything you always wanted to know, and now
It
his
was
next film is like as safe as this one.
yeah. I mean, everything you wanted to know, just just wanted to push everything. It's like a child in a computer store, just all wanting to push all the buttons. But yeah, that kind of he kind of like brought it back a little on this in this movie, and he went kind of ham in a lot of different directions. But I really still enjoyed this film. I did not like it. I
Yeah.
actually still loved it. 7 out of 10
All right.
stars. Seven
Seven
out of
out of
10
ten.
Woodies.
Yeah, 7 out of 10 Woodies for Sleeper. And as I've said, the next film would be their second pairing, at least in a Woody Allen film, a pure Woody Allen film in terms of like being the writer and director. Of course, we can't discount that this film is also written. It's actually co-written by Marshall Brickman and Woody Allen. Woody Allen's musician friend, if I'm not mistaken, and they're going to be writing Annie Hall too. So this is something to take note of. Once we see Annie Hall and the next few films, we can definitely go back to this one and see how that co-writer relationship developed along the way. But the next film would be Love and Death. What do you
Love
expect
and
from
death.
this one? Especially that you've gone 2 or 3 notches down the hype train of the expectations and the pushing
Yeah.
boundaries. What do you expect with Love and Death?
Love and Death, if I'm just gauging it off the title,
Right.
it will the tone would definitely feel a little bit more serious, I would think. Unless unless he's gonna take me by surprise again and just be irreverent with with the whole theme of death and love. But I kind of expect kind of a change of tone. So that would actually be a lot more refreshing to see, because we've seen comedy after comedy in the last 4 films that we've seen. So I want to feel something aside from laughter.
Yeah. Right.
is
Right. Right.
is yeah, I think I'm ready for more serious things.
You're ready for the real Woody this time. You're getting close
Oh
to that
no.
real Woody Allen experience. But not that's not to say that the first 4 or 5 films are not real Woody Allen experiences.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
think as we go, as we almost conclude the early funny ones, as Woody
Hmm.
would call this era, I think that he was, if he did not do these to please and get like a sizable part of the mainstream audience, he wouldn't have been able to do a lot of the things he did after a bit more freely. So
Yeah.
that's one thing to kind of like jot down for Q, because he's guys, this is the most exciting, I think, transitionary period, because we're actually meeting someone who's going to experience that bridge, and we're gonna see that bridge in Love and Death. And
Okay.
this is it. I mean, there's not much more to talk about Sleeper. let's move on from this one. That was a special thing, but the verdict is it's much more mainstream, so it's not as impactful, if I may say so,
Yeah.
as the first three Woody Allen offerings that Q has experienced. That was today's episode of Woody Allen's Decades in Film, a podcast about the incredible filmography of one of the most prolific and most controversial filmmakers of our time.
Join us again next week for another deep dive on the art of Woody Allen.